Let's talk about it. I'm joined right now by NewsNation senior national security contributor and former U.S. Air Force Assistant Vice Chief of Staff, retired Lieutenant General Richard Newton. General, thank you so much for coming on. So what is Secretary Blinken and these Arab foreign ministers, what do they need to prioritize in these meetings to ensure that there is, in fact, a peaceful transition for Syria?
Well, good afternoon, Jesse. It is absolutely in the best interest of the United States that there is indeed a smooth transition of power from the fallen Assad regime to a new regime that is taking over Syria. But however, I would keep in mind for our viewers, and certainly this is in the forefront of President Biden and Secretary Blinken, of U.S. national security interests there in Syria. First and foremost is that Syria does not become a haven for terrorists to be able to plan an attack against the United States and our interests and our allies. Secondly, that the United States prevent or there not be a spillover of terrorist organizations into allies and friends such as Jordan and Israel. There's also a huge cache of chemical weapons that Assad used against his own people over 300 times over the last 10 years. And we would not want, nefarious organizations such as terrorist organizations to get their hands on those chemical weapons. And my final point here is certainly in the best interest of the United States and our allies that ISIS not come back from the ashes that it had been in, especially up there in the northeastern sector of Syria. But lots of U.S. national security interest here and lots at stake with Secretary Blinken leading up to the transition with President Trump.
Those are all incredibly important considerations in the wake of what just happened. And as I mentioned, it's not the only crisis in the Middle East that Biden is trying to deal with. I mean, he's pushing for a ceasefire in Gaza before he leaves office. This timetable, is that actually realistic?
I don't think it is. I think the only opportunity I believe we have with a ceasefire deal with Hamas, or Israel has with Hamas, is two key points. One is that Hamas agrees to allowing Israel military forces to remain in Gaza after a ceasefire deal is struck. And secondly, that Hamas provide Israel a complete list of hostages. There's 100 hostages, 4 of them are Americans, by the way, Jesse. They need to turn over that list of hostages to the Israeli principals in order to make sure that they're going to follow through with those hostages. Now, my sources tell me certainly not all of those 100 hostages I mentioned are alive. Our hopes and prayers are with the families of those hostages, American hostages, but there could be up to a third less that are actually alive at this point. But nonetheless, that's a sticking point here that I've yet to hear that Hamas has agreed to.
Can I just expand upon that, why they haven't agreed to it? Because, look, Hezbollah agreed to peace with Israel over a month ago. Most of Hamas's leadership has been killed in the war. What is their negotiating point? What is their power in this? I mean, is it the hostages? I mean, what is holding up a ceasefire in Gaza when you think about what seems to be they don't have much in their court?
They do, except they're holding those hostages. But what's changed over the last couple of weeks? First off, you got Iran is significantly weakened, Jesse. Secondly, you've got Hezbollah has struck a deal with Israel. Israel has effectively nearly decimated Hezbollah. And so that's really an essential aspect of this. And third, you've got the fall of the Assad regime in Syria. And so Hamas is really backed into a corner here. Hamas as an organization, they were up to 30,000 terrorist warfighters. They're down to, likely less than 10,000, perhaps even 5,000, but they're not really a unified military organization. They're more fighting like a guerrilla warfare in pockets of resistance, especially up in the northern part of Gaza. So their backs are against the wall. The challenge is also who is really leading Hamas at this point, who can actually forcibly negotiate a position for a ceasefire to really in the conditions to be created for them to exist.
That's a good point there. And then again, the connection back to Syria. Before I let you go, I have to ask you what's going on with the drones and what is going on with the response to the drones in New Jersey?
Very concerning and somewhat confounding. I don't, my bottom line here, Jesse, I don't believe there's anything particularly nefarious from an outside nation state organization or state, trying to do some nefarious activity, but it's just an unknown. I think we owe the American people, the lead federal agency of this is the FBI. Once we start getting answers in terms of the source of these drones, they need to really start now telling the American people. This has the attention of the House and the Senate subcommittees, certainly has the attention of the administration, but at this point, we don't know. But the first and foremost, what we need to make sure is that the safety and the security of the American people is withheld. And I'm talking about safety and security principally in airspace. You see those drones flying over there, and we don't know where they're sourced from, but that creates a safety hazard in terms of both commercial aviation and military aviation. My final point here is that there could be potentially some nefarious activity in terms of surveilling and reconnaissing, some of our military installations and other national security facilities. So we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to get to the bottom of it quickly.
Yeah, we just had a guest on in New Jersey who thinks that they might be mapping the territory. And listen, federal government, when retired Lieutenant General Richard Newton speaks about this, you listen. So thank you so much, General. Really appreciate you taking the time and talking about all these subjects with us on this Saturday. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jesse.
All right.